either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Get down! They're coming for your brains! Get down!
That was bad. You're
Welcome
right.
to the Good, the Bad, the Weird podcast. I'm Nicho.
And I'm Chris. Oh, man.
If you can't tell, since we're continuing our bingo pick from season 6,
Yeah.
thank you again, Riley, for choosing Maggie. If you couldn't guess, we're doing another Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
A much more serious Schwarzenegger, though.
Yeah, that it is.
Yeah.
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 We're doing Maggie, if you couldn't understand about coming for your brains.
Yeah, this was a new one for me. I had briefly heard about Maggie. I hadn't seen Maggie until now. And so I was going into this hoping and praying this was going to be as good as a lot of people had told me. And it was okay.
Yeah, I have known about this movie for a while. It's just one that I hadn't watched before.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm not the biggest fan, I'd say, but I do enjoy what I've seen of his stuff. I
would argue I'm a pretty big fan of Arnold Schwarzenegger, but that's partially because he happens to do a bunch of work in the genre I love, which is shitty 70s and 80s action movies, so...
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to watch those without Arnold Schwarzenegger showing up.
Yeah, just a bit, or like 2000s, 2010s Jason Statham.
Yeah.
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 Well, and yeah, I for those who don't know, Maggie is about zombie apocalypse, basically, and a father dealing with his daughter being bitten.
And granted, these are two things that I should like, zombies and Arnold Schwarzenegger, but again, this is a serious film, and I have been told this is Arnold like you've never seen him. He's so serious, he's a father figure in this one. You know, this is a very emotional and touching movie. And I see the idea. I see the concept, and I'm not saying Arnold was a bad pick. I just don't feel like this should have been a movie. This should have been a book.
Okay, well, we'll get into that, but we probably have disappointed Riley a little bit, because
yeah, sorry.
Here's why he chose this flick.
Uh-huh.
I'll admit that it's been a while since I've seen this movie. I hadn't had a chance to rewatch it, but I remember it being very neat. Came out in 2015 at the height of the zombie craze, and it did some little things that definitely freshened things up a bit. I thought making it a serious drama was a cool idea, and seeing Arnold in a serious non-action role I thought was a treat. My thoughts on this movie were always that it was just overlooked, neat, and more people need to have seen/talked about it.
And I agree. The concept is neat. I did enjoy Arnold Schwarzenegger being cast as not Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes.
It's just most of the concepts and most of the emotions really would have done better, I think, on paper.
Yeah, I agree. I do think it's an interesting idea, because for to give a little bit more of, it's not just a zombie apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
It's a zombie apocalypse where once bitten, you don't turn right away, or
yes,
it's not like you turn overnight. It's like over a period of two weeks, I think, is like the time frame that they say the bite's pretty bad. If the bites are pretty bad.
Yeah, it's long enough that it's more of a disease pandemic sort of movie as opposed to a horror zombie thriller.
Yeah, which is something very interesting, especially coming a few years out of the pandemic now, but still coming out of that and just like seeing, okay, well, there's parallels between that. This movie came out in 2015, so. And
I do kind of wonder if watching it now, especially having not seen it pre-pandemic, I wonder if that kind of ruined it for me, because some of the stressors of the movie, some of the big turning points and plot points are things that we now know and have seen in real life in ways that the movie had no way of predicting and showing in a way we now know is correct. And unfortunately, they're plot points that are big enough that the way that it's handled doesn't necessarily... It feels really strange watching it done in like this totally... I don't want to say wrong, because the movie had no idea of knowing what was going to happen, but it does not feel grounded anymore.
Is it because of the softer tone to the movie than you usually expect from a zombie flick?
No, I actually really liked that. I really like that this was more of a drama. It has horror, but only because some of it's kind of gross and there's like a few more zombie-based scenes, but they're really light and they're very few and far between.
So like horror for non-horror fans?
I would argue, yeah. The gross zombie scenes that most people are not a big fan of, they're very light, and this is really more of like an illness and death sort of drama. And I'm all for that. Like, I thought that part was really cool. I think the things that made it, like, a little off were some of the big plot points around when and how quarantine happened, because they kind of briefly talk about it.
Yeah, they're very... That's the thing, is like, they are super, super loose with the quarantine.
And, like, don't get me wrong, if this had been maybe presented a little bit differently, as opposed to just a normal standard zombie, like, bite equals infection and death, maybe I could have, like, figured out, like, or left it up to more of a chance, but the way the movie handles this is such a weird turn, especially having now been through a pandemic and seeing what the protocols and procedures that could be put in place look like. This movie feels really weird. Like, you're not supposed to empathize terribly much with the quote-unquote bad cops or the bad people in the film who say, like, oh, we need to nip this in the bud quickly, we need to, like, work on a vaccine and work on getting people away from the dangers of being bitten, and you're not supposed to be on their side. They are clearly written as not necessarily the villain, but the protagonist of the film, and yet they have a good point.
Yeah, well, and I think maybe that's because... maybe then your issue is because it doesn't hammer too hard one way or the other. It's just kind of all around. Everyone's kind of understanding that they don't want them to go away, but they're also like they're looking out for the rest of the people. That's I think my main problem. It's wishy-washy. It's wishy-washy on the zombie part. It's wishy-washy on, you know, the protocol for this infection. It's wishy-washy on, like, this is supposed to be the end of the world and, like, they're the last survivors. They're not acting like it. Like, and I'm not saying make this into the horror genre that we're used to. I'm saying maybe rework the zombie portion of this. Well, okay, so here's the thing I think is what makes this interesting for me is it plays around with the zombie trope, but it's a controlled zombie trope of they when they stop for, like, the gas station and it's like, okay, well, there's going to be more zombies. That's really, like, the only kind of jump scare we kind of get in the whole movie.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I appreciate that that's, like, the only bit we have, because it's like, okay, everyone's known about this. It's a zombie virus that was actually controlled.
Yeah.
And they're, like, the other thing, too, is that, for me, it's also, okay, it's taking over disease, it's taking over plants and animals. It's not just a contained to human disease.
Yeah.
It's a massive outbreak. And I think that's what also makes it a little bit more realistic, is, like, okay, this thing is cross-species hopping instead of, like, okay, just humans eating humans.
Yeah, I did like that. And honestly, that's the sort of parts that I kind of wish were more. And granted, this movie's plenty long. It did not need more runtime to fill in those gaps. But you see where my wonder if maybe as a book or a novel, a lot of that sort of, like, question or mystery that should have been could have just been left to a reader's imagination instead of having to fill in the gaps visually.
Well, here's what I think with this too. I think part of it is because this movie is going to be more of a... It's one of those movies where it's disguising what the movie's really about.
Yes.
I think it's more so a movie about terminal illness.
I completely agree.
But with a zombie coding of, like, okay, well, this is someone going through something that they know they're not going to win. It's just a matter of time when it happens. And so, like, adding the zombiness to it makes it just a little bit different than making it your standard, like, heart sobbing. Okay, there's going to be a heavy moment. There's going to be a heavy argument, because this movie has those too, but they're not, like, over the top arguments. It's just, like, she has a couple little outbursts, but that's, like, it. I
completely agree. And I know that the audience felt the same way. Most of the critics and most of the fan base that I read about who had enjoyed this movie when it originally came out in theaters, most people who hit this the hardest had a real life experience that they felt they could tie this to. And I see it. I totally get it. I just think the way the zombies are arguably maybe too normal zombie for this to, like, fully... I think that's why it never quite went anywhere. Is the zombies are still normal zombies with the exception of a couple of, like, crossbreedy sort of stuff, but the way that they handle it, the way that they go about zombie-ness, pretty standard stuff. Would have been more interested in seeing this more in, like, the more, like, make it more diseasey.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I used to really like zombies until, like, it really blew up with The Walking Dead.
Yeah, it was too much zombie all the time.
Yeah, but I still watch them. I think so. I couldn't help but think of this when I was watching this movie, of a different zombie movie from Japan called Stacy, Attack of the Schoolgirl Zombies.
Wow, what a name.
Involves a mysterious disease. When girls turn 17, they seek, like, seek moments of happiness, and, like, the moment they're the super happy, they turn into flesh-eating zombies. Like, there's actually, like, gory bits to it too. I think you probably would have preferred something that had that little bit of emotion, but then added, like, something even heavier with the zombies themselves.
Yes, I do think you're right. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this movie's bad. It's a perfectly good movie. It just doesn't quite stand out hard enough. And I think part of that is because the amount of zombie stuff that happened from the late 2010s all the way up until now kind of oversaturated the market. We had a lot of zombies to pick from, on top of then having to go through pandemic and then a whole bunch of pandemic-based content.
Yeah.
The two things didn't quite stand out compared to the sea of content that they unfortunately are now swimming in.
Well, and so that's the thing too, that I think part of the reason the American zombie movies have petered out.
Yeah.
And they had the flux because of The Walking Dead and whatnot.
Absolutely.
But because no one's doing as interesting stuff, in my opinion. I've talked to Cal about this quite a few times, of why Japan does zombie movies better, is because they take the idea and push it to the extreme. Like, there's another movie called Tokyo Living Dead Idol.
Yes.
It's about an idol who gets bit by a zombie, a known virus that's around, and you get infected in 48 hours, and then they kill you after you've turned. But she's going to fight this virus. She runs away, and it's just, like, over the top and just cheesy. And then same thing with zombie-ass Toilet of the Dead. Like, it takes the zombie genre and just twists it and makes it a little bit more grotesque or more out there than what you normally see. And granted, there's another one I'm not going to 100% mention, but you know me, I've talked about it a handful of times. But that's the thing, is, like, our zombies have become such a generic genre that everything feels like that. And I think that's the issue with this one, is because it has an interesting concept. It has heart to it. It has more going for it than most zombie movies. It just doesn't have that flair or something that, like, really set it apart, other than, okay, you got the terminally ill story. Big one. Yeah,
and don't get me wrong, I loved seeing Arnold in this movie. I did think he did a good job, and I would watch another film with him as the serious, more parental role. But your big catch can't be that, hey, it's Arnold in a non-action movie. Like, that can't be your tagline.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to last. Like, eventually he's going to do other stuff, because, you know, he could only be governor for so long, and then the scandals can only last so long. He knew that his retirement plan was to go back to acting. And he can't keep doing the stuff he was doing, because now he's an old man. Yeah,
same thing with, like, I know the Expendables get over the top at some point.
They do.
I've seen pieces, but
it's funny, but it's that one's very self-aware.
Yeah.
We've seen the move from action and muscle-based actors into the more serious roles. This has been happening since the dawn of acting. We knew that eventually, if Arnold was going to go back to acting, he was going to do serious roles. So having that be, like, the whole shtick of your movie, unfortunately it's not going to work. Granted, it is interesting. I did like this movie. I just don't know how much, like, I'm going to be coming back to this.
Yeah, I think I'd come back to it maybe once or twice, just because there are some other things I want to, like, revisit. Because I think my issue also is that while it is a movie about terminal illness,
yes,
I don't think it explores it fully, especially like with her. It doesn't explore the stupidity of youth.
They missed out a lot.
It tries creating, like, a little bit of a cautionary tale of, like, oh, you go out on your own, this is what happens, you get bit.
Yeah.
But then also, like, there's not, like, her reflecting on her life. Like, It's not really like going back to like she has the one night with her friends, and then she has like a couple tender moments with her dad, and that's like it.
And again, I lean back into the concept is very good. I think it would have done better as a book or novel where we really could have spent a ton of time exploring the emotions of her as the main thought provider for the story. Like, really get into, like, why does this bother her? Because we do know it does, but, like, it's so quick.
Maybe that's the issue, is it doesn't focus on the father or daughter. It's kind of that wishy-washy in-between of, well, you kind of like both characters, so we're going to make them equally boring and interesting at the same time.
And granted, I don't do a shit ton of research for these smaller reviews. I do know that this was based off of some writings. I couldn't find like an actual book.
Yeah, it was written by John Scott III, directed by Henry Hobson.
Which if I'm not mistaken, I think John Scott III rewrote an existing screenplay that someone else had and like reworked it completely. Which, like, sure, why not? So I feel like this one could have had a little bit more background to, like, base itself off of, and then, like, left the holes that we have questions about open for that other media to fill. Or, something that I don't say very often, because I'm not a TV show person, I could see this format working much better in a TV show setting.
Yeah, I think
just something with a little bit more time to really explore, because like we know that this bothers all of the characters. We do see the relationships start to shift and how this is hard for the stepmom, this is how hard for the father. Like, we do see that. I think it's the aunt,
it's not the stepmom.
Oh, I wasn't sure.
The stepmom is back, or no, that's right. They stop at her house. Yeah, you're right. It is the stepmom. Okay. Sorry, my bad. I got it mixed up.
No worries.
That's the thing. They don't explore any of that either. It's just
I get that, like, if you are one of those people who like can really like pinpoint and empathize with a character without a bunch of extra stuff, then like you probably are not going to have the like complaints I do. I would have loved more time with all of the characters to really explore that trope of loss, that trope of pre-grief, knowing something that is going to happen. And I just feel like we unfortunately rushed through this because this is a movie and there's only so much time to build not only a zombie apocalypse, but also all of the sadness and death that, like, really should have had a lot more effort and time put through it.
It should have been more dialogue heavy than it actually is, because
100%. It was surprisingly quiet.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the issue too, is like it tries to be somber, but it's just not like the right setting or the right like progression of events for like it to give you that somberness. It's not like Perfect Days, where like Perfect Days has a lot of moments that you can reflect and like relate to that character. This one just doesn't have that way to like.
No, and like it's not like you're sitting with the characters in moments, right? Like you don't have time to feel that grief and sadness like you do with other horror dramas, where like you have time to breathe in that tragedy. These ones, like, each thing that is happening quickly, and it's a very quick and snappy editing, which does look nice, but it doesn't allow time for the audience to really get in the minds of everyone until the movie's over, and by then most of us have moved on, unfortunately.
Yeah, and while like the ending I think is very sweet.
I do too. I did like it. Again, I liked this movie.
It doesn't. That's the other thing too. Like, because it's trying to lead up to not only the somberness of everything, but the hard truth of there's a finite end to where this movie's going.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the last minute of like, okay, this thing happens. Okay, well now I have to do it. And like it just doesn't really.
Yeah, like it is missing a component, which unfortunately I think most of us now, having gone through a real pandemic, we now maybe not be able to articulate it, but we now know that there is a necessary extra level of finality that the movie just unfortunately did not know how to hit.
No.
It could not have predicted 5 years from then.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's an odd zombie flick. That's kind of the...
It is, and don't get me wrong, I did like this movie. I enjoyed watching it. I think everyone did a very good job in it, and I'm not the super zombie fan. I have a friend, though, is, and she has heard this movie. She did like this movie, but I think if you're a super zombie fan, like my friend is, this isn't on her list of zombie films, because it's not really a zombie film.
Yeah, I get it. The terminally ill movie with a coat of zombie paint.
Yeah. Now, my friend who is into, like, hospital dramas, she had also seen this. She loved this movie. This was more for her.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, I can see that. So then at the end, rent, buy, stream, or decline that we ever watched Maggie despite having an audio recording of us watching it.
I would stream this. It is a good movie. Everyone does a good job. It's really nice to see Arnold do something that is not a action-packed sort of film. It's just not a great movie. I wouldn't buy it.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. I think it's worth at least a watch just because it is so different than most of the other zombie movies. Even the couple others that have a very loosely similar setup of the disease takes a while and then you got to go into quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
I think it just doesn't have that pizzazz that the others do. Don't get me wrong, it's interesting enough for a watch.
Yes.
But it just doesn't hit my need for an over-the-top zombie movie.
No, it is a good movie. It had a lot of potential. It just was not a great movie, and unfortunately was hit by a wave of zombie films, and then unfortunately disease films. Yeah. So it unfortunately does not quite stand out.
Yep.
Sorry.
But Ryan, I do want to say thank you again for participating in Season 6 Bingo. It was fun going back to Conan and finally getting to see your Scooby-Doo fetish flicks as well.
And I did enjoy this. I probably wouldn't have watched it if you hadn't said you liked it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's been one that's on my list or I've known about it for years. I just never sat down to watch it because Schwarzenegger horror. You don't. It's one of those. It's that odd thing where you know about it, but you don't hear anything about it, and I don't know if that's worse than hearing only bad things about something.
Yeah. No, that was really weird. I did try and look up a little bit of info on this. Weirdly silent about both the production, the writing style, and just trailers. All of the promotion stuff that we normally get, not a lot. Nope. I don't know.
Maybe for good reason.
Yeah, I don't know, but I am glad I watched it, so thanks for recommending.
Yep, thank you. But anywho, this has been the Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast.
Thanks for listening.
Peace. Thank you for stopping by this here town of the Good, the Bad, and the Weird. We appreciate your listenership, and if you want more of our takes in your life, feel free to check us out on social media at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, or TGTBTW for short. As well, if we missed a fact, your favorite part of a movie, or just have a suggestion and want to reach out and say howdy, feel free to email us at tgtbtwpodcast@gmail.com. And feel free to join our Discord at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, where we talk about movies, just share random banter here and there. And always, check out our podcasters, streamers, or any other content creator we shout out in our episodes. We really appreciate it. And as always, thank you for listening. Peace.